Can you hear me better now? Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Free a little, like free with an L. Yes.
Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to what's going to be a magnificent seminar. There's so many concern about the reality of the not only COVID, but much more the vaccine in our neighborhood. We want to be part of the solution, and so we invite you and feel grateful that you've joined us around the world on YouTube and Facebook Live. We are so grateful this afternoon that you join us. We have two magnificent presenters who understand, who are going to help us understand the importance and the impact of this vaccine in our community and why we ought to be part of the solution. So we welcome you to it. We want to open with prayer to begin this journey. We are grateful for Dr. Gerber, who is with us, one of the physicians at the hospital here in Brooklyn Hospital, and Dr. Megan Free, who are also going to join us via Zoom. So thank you so much for coming to be a part of this, and we are grateful. God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to impart knowledge. You say without knowledge, the people will perish. Help us now to understand. We pray that you be with our presenters, with the hearers of this presentation, for all those who join us from around the world. We pray you may make this a very enriching time in your presence, but also in our community. In God's name we pray. Amen. So without much further ado, I want to introduce Dr. Gerber, who will begin our presentation. Welcome, Dr. Gerber.
So thank you everyone for having me. My name is Dr. Gerber. We also have Dr. Friel joining us virtually here. And today we're going to present on the COVID-19 vaccines. We're going to answer what we need to know here. So the objectives that we kind of want you to get out from this presentation, we're going to discuss the background of the COVID-19 infection. We're going to discuss the epidemiology, what occurs when patients have COVID-19. We're going to review the COVID-19 vaccines that are available, and then we're going to talk about frequently asked questions regarding the vaccines. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Friel. She's going to continue and talk about COVID-19. Bear with us 1 second. We're going to get Dr. Friel talking in 1 second.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Sorry, bear with me 1 second because now the screen is gone. Okay, so we just want to... All right, so we're going to start off just going through what is COVID-19. Just giving a little background. I'm sure many of us are familiar with it right now, but it is an infectious disease caused by this newly discovered coronavirus. And coronaviruses have been around for a very long time, typically not infecting humans, but this particular virus we found out can infect humans now. So it was called COVID-19 because of several reasons. So the CO portion stands for corona, for coronavirus. The VI stands for virus, and the D is disease, because this is a disease. Now, the 19 comes from the 2019. It was discovered in 2019. Therefore, instead of saying 2019 novel coronavirus or 2019 nCoV, it's much easier to just say COVID-19, so that's where the terminology came from. Now moving on to the next slide, we're going to just talk about the transmission of the virus. Now it is an airborne virus, and that's why it's so important that we have distance 6 feet apart from each other, wearing masks, because it's very easily transmittable. It transmits when someone coughs or sneezes or maybe breathes a little too loud, like mouth breathes, and expels droplets into the air. And then anyone around them, at least within 6 feet, can uptake those droplets and become infected. So we are avoiding crowdedness because this is very easily transmittable in crowds and shared spaces. That's why there's barriers in all these restaurants and facilities now. And by using a mask, we're preventing ourselves from breathing in the virus itself. So with respect to epidemiology, it's very important to know how easily spread this is and how high the cases are. So in the last 7 days alone, there have been over 67,000 new cases diagnosed in the United States. That's a very large amount for a total of 27 million cases so far. There have also been over 2,300 deaths, which is very significant, and there's been a total of almost 492,000 deaths in the United States from this virus. So I think we've come up on the year mark already. So over 1 year, there's been over 490,000 people who have died. Now, if you look to the figure to your right, you can see that New York is a very dark blue. That means we're still some of the highest cases in the United States and some of the higher death rates. Other areas of the country, you see they're darkening, such as Texas and Florida, but most of the East Coast has been the most highly affected. Move to the next slide. So daily new cases in the United States. So looking at the United States, you see last year, about 1 year ago, most of the country was not as affected as they are today. There were less than 50,000 cases, but as you see, as the virus progressed and has spread more, the cases have gradually increased, and then once the holidays occurred, cases spiked to over 300,000 in the United States alone. Now that the holidays are over, it's tapering off, but there are significantly more daily new cases than 1 year ago today. Now, if we focus on New York, where we are, you can see that we were more highly affected by it 1 year ago than most of the country in daily new cases, but we had tapered off because we were following protocols, doing social distancing, wearing our masks, and we really were able to fight back against this virus. But as I mentioned before, because of the holidays and people letting their guard down and being with their families and not social distancing, our number of events and cases have spiked dramatically. Now it's starting to resolve again, but this just shows the importance of social distancing and being aware of what we do and how we interact with people. Now, alone in Brooklyn, there were over 1,200 new cases diagnosed yesterday, just yesterday, Saturday. So we do know it's still highly contagious. Many people are being affected. So we do still have to fight back against this and do everything we can as individuals. So now we'll go into how we can fight back about it. So we're going to go into the COVID-19 vaccine the reason why you guys are all participating in this today. So the question most people have is, how does this vaccine work? We know it's new technology. It's pretty scary that it came out so quickly, but we're going to go through and explain exactly how it works so you're more familiar and you're more educated when you're going to get the vaccine. So it's an mRNA vaccine that carries genetic material, and it teaches the cells how to make these proteins called spike proteins. And these spike proteins are found on the surface of the virus. So in introducing these spike proteins, our cells learn how to respond to the virus, learn how to produce antibodies to fight the virus, and therefore, if we were ever infected, we would be able to fight it before it causes any issues at all. So while this vaccine is new, this idea to introduce proteins into the body to teach our cells is not a foreign concept. It's happened many, many times before with many other vaccines. So just to make it a little more clear, I found this image that kind of explains it for you. So we have this mRNA, which is similar to how a DNA looks like, but it's not DNA, it's protein based. And it's the mRNA for these spike proteins of the coronavirus. Now, when you inject the mRNA into the muscle, it starts teaching our cells what spike protein look like and how we can respond to it, which is where our antibodies start developing. So if this was ever introduced into our body unexpectedly, our antibodies would just fight it immediately instead of not knowing how to respond to the virus. So two major questions everyone has is, can this vaccine give me COVID? The answer is no, it cannot give you COVID-19. And can this vaccine change my DNA? Absolutely not. And I'll go into it a little bit more now. So mRNA vaccines will not cause COVID. I promise you they do not cause COVID because it does not contain a live virus. It contains the protein, and the protein is not the virus itself. Therefore, you cannot get sick with COVID-19 from this vaccine. You might develop symptoms like fever or maybe a little bit of chills or fatigue, but that's normal. That's a risk with any vaccine. That's a risk with the flu vaccine, as we know we've probably all experienced in the past with the flu vaccine, but it will not give you COVID-19. It will also not change your DNA. I've heard many rumors out there that it could change and alter your DNA. It will not. These vaccines are just teaching your cells how to make these proteins, make these antibodies, but the vaccine, the mRNA itself will never enter into the nucleus to affect your DNA. It cannot get into the nucleus. It cannot affect your DNA at all. Zero interaction with your DNA, so it's very safe.
All right.
And now I'll pass it to Anthony to review the available vaccines.
Thank you, Dr. Friel. So the available vaccines we currently have that are FDA approved are one that's made by Pfizer or BioNTech, and then another that's made by Moderna. So both vaccines are approved by the FDA for emergency use authorization. So what that means is the vaccines can be used in a time of an epidemic, pandemic, or crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic is one of these situations. If we look at the two vaccines individually based on the trials when they did come out, the Pfizer vaccine was shown to be 95% effective in symptomatic COVID. The Moderna vaccine was almost very similar at 94.1% effectiveness. Now, both vaccines are a 2-schedule dose, which means the Pfizer vaccine, you would get your first dose, and then 3 weeks later, you would get a second dose. Moderna, very similarly, you would get your first dose, and then 4 weeks later, or 28 days later, you would get your second dose. Now, people that have been vaccinated have to receive the 2-dose series with the same vaccine product. So what that means is if I got Moderna, then 4 weeks later, I have to get Moderna again, and vice versa with Pfizer. If I was to get Pfizer, I have to continue the series with Pfizer. You can't really interchange the vaccines because that's not how they were studied. As Dr. Friel mentioned numerous times, the vaccines do not contain the COVID-19 virus. Now let's take a look at these a little more specifically. The Pfizer vaccine was studied in patients that are 16 or older, thus that's what it's recommended to. Moderna, on the other hand, is recommended to anyone 18 years old or older. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Pfizer was shown to be 95% effective in preventing symptomatic COVID-19, while Moderna was shown to be 94.1% effective in preventing symptoms of COVID-19. There was a little bit less efficacy in patients that were 65 or older, but very slight and nothing to really be concerned about. Both of them are, again, a 2-dose series. With Pfizer, you get week 0 rather, and then week 3, right, 21 days later. Moderna, again, you're gonna get your first dose, and then 4 weeks later, you'll get your second dose. The big difference, just for you guys to understand, is that the Pfizer vaccine comes in a powder, and then you have to inject liquid into it, and then that vial has 6 doses in it. Moderna, on the other hand, is already made liquid, and each vial contains 10 doses, okay? So 6 in the Pfizer vial, 10 in the Moderna vial. Side effects, very similar, right? These are something we're all really concerned about. What are the side effects I'm gonna get from this vaccine? So the side effects that we're most seen, really, are our injection reactions, right? So reaction, pain maybe where you got injected, or some redness or soreness. But these are really with any vaccine you're gonna get, or any injection, right? Other things they showed were some tiredness, some fatigue, maybe headaches or muscle pain, joint pain. Some people have said they have a fever once they get it, which is fine because that's your body, again, learning to fight off that virus. That's where that fever comes from. But that's something that's gonna go away. Both of the studies did show that it was really after the second dose that more side effects were seen. And that was really reported in the younger population. So the older population, believe it or not, had less side effects after the second dose than the younger ones. If we look at patients that are pregnant, again, pregnancy was not something that was studied in these trials, right? They didn't really enroll a lot of patients that were pregnant. So data doesn't really support giving it to a pregnant person. That being said, animal trials did not show any issues with regard to giving the vaccine in pregnant animals. So again, that's something you want to think about if you have a pregnant patient who wants to get the vaccine. The other big thing that's really been in the news was the storage. Now, Pfizer has to be stored at a very, very low temperature of about 94 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit, I'm sorry. Really ultra cold freezer with dry ice. Moderna, really a normal freezer it could be stored in. That being said, that's really more of a worry for us administering the vaccine than you guys getting the vaccine, right? Because once you get the vaccine, it's already going to be the temperature it needs to be injected. Now let's talk about the approval process. Now this is a question that comes up with me and my family and my friends all the time. We know that vaccines normally take years upon years to get approved. Why did the COVID-19 only take 1 year? Is it safe that it only took 1 year? Let's look into it. So the FDA used the same exact strict standards that it's been using for decades with the approval of the vaccine. Not a single step in the COVID-19 vaccine approval was skipped. That also being said, 2 independent committees looked at the process of approval and made sure that it was effective and safe. So that was the FDA and the CDC were both monitoring it to make sure that not a single thing was skipped. Now the next slide shows the approval process. So again, as I mentioned, the normal approval process takes about 6 years. However, the COVID-19 had this accelerated process. Keep in mind, the accelerated process was because we had an unlimited amount of resources, a limited amount of money, unlimited amount of scientists. Everyone in the world at that point was working on the COVID-19 vaccine. So let me go over the approval process of how it works so you guys understand it, so that at the dinner table or when talking to your friends, you can also explain this to them. So typically, scientists use about 3 months or so, 3 to 6 months, to kind of locate the genome or the genetic makeup to make a vaccine, right? Because we need the proper ingredients so that we know the vaccine will work. So the scientists will look anywhere between 3 to 6 months for that. After that, they take about 5 months, 6 months, maybe a year, and they test the vaccine in a very small group of people. So we're talking about 20, maybe 100 people they tested it, and to make sure that it's safe. If it's safe in those people, then they go into phase 2, where now they test in a much larger group of people. We're now talking maybe hundreds of people. Now we're looking at safety, we're looking at its effective, how it works in the body, how your body responds to the vaccine. After that, once that's proven, we move on to step 3, and step 3 is a much longer process. That could be a year, 2 years, and then we look at a huge amount of patients. At that point, we're looking at this big clinical trial, these words that have always been in the media. What is a clinical trial? Well, it looks at this huge subset of patients with many different disease states, many different ages. We compare it to a control or a placebo, which is nothing, which is a nothing dose, to see if it works there. After that, it goes into distribution, it goes into marketing. Okay? So how did the COVID-19 kind of go through this? Well, it had an accelerated process where a lot of these steps were done at the same time. So if we look at, remember, the research part as well as the phase 1 part, those parts were done at the same time. So as the scientists were locating the sequence of the vaccine, they were also testing it in this small group of people. So that took about 5 months altogether. So instead of doing these processes separately, They did them together. And why were they allowed to do that? They had a huge number of participants that were willing to volunteer. They had the finances to go along with it. They had the top doctors and scientists in the world looking at it. After that, the clinical trials, so steps 2, where they looked at the small group for safety, and step 3, where they looked at that large clinical trial group, were also done at the same time. While that was happening, they were already manufacturing it and figured out how to distribute this to people. So instead of all these processes taking separate times because of personnel, because of money, because of this, that, they were all kind of done together. And that's why we were able to get the COVID vaccine out quickly, efficiently, and have patients be ready to vaccinate within 1 year of discovering this virus almost. Now let's go over the length of protection, something that a bit of controversy nowadays also. You get vaccinated. When am I protected? So protection usually occurs within 1 to 2 weeks after receiving the second dose of the virus. What we don't know, unfortunately, yet is how long that vaccine will be effective in our body. How long will it protect us against COVID? We're not going to know that right away. We might know that in a year, and then we could work accordingly. And the CDC is very on top of it to see how often we should get vaccinated. Should we get vaccinated every year, like the flu shot? Should we get vaccinated every 5 years? Should we get vaccinated once in a lifetime? That we're gonna figure out, and then once we know, we will share that information with you. So what happens if I've already had COVID-19? I got COVID-19 when it first came out. Do I still need to get vaccinated? Yes. So the COVID-19 vaccine is safe for patients who have already had COVID-19. So it's important to get vaccinated because, again, we don't know how long that immunity that you already have lasts. So even if you have positive antibodies, you could still get the COVID-19 vaccine. So next question that comes up is, once I get vaccinated, do I need to wear a mask? And the unfortunate answer, whether everyone likes it or not, is yes, we still need to wear masks. So similar to other vaccines, we need a large number in the community to get vaccinated to prevent transmission, right? Me getting vaccinated, you getting vaccinated is not enough to prevent this virus from transmitting. We need a large number of people to get vaccinated or to stop the spread of COVID-19. So there's a lot of news articles, there's a lot of media, there's a lot of information out there about COVID-19, about the vaccines, and you might read something that on Facebook or on social media that says COVID-19, someone got hives and passed out and never will get the vaccine again. That being said, these are not reliable sources, okay? To get right information and not be misinformed, the CDC is where you go for the information. The CDC is updated daily with the COVID-19 vaccine. Nothing is hush-hush, nothing is hidden. Everything that happens with regards to the vaccine is answered. And they have a wonderful Q&A, they have a wonderful frequently asked questions section that goes over everything we discussed today on top of more questions that may arise, okay? So that's really the source we want everyone to use for information as opposed to social media or as opposed to kind of gossip columns that may have misinformation. All that being said, the only way to control the spread of COVID-19 and really to stop this pandemic once and for all is to get vaccinated. So that's why we're here today, to kind of share the importance of vaccination and answer any questions you might have. That being said, me and Dr. Friel are here to answer any questions for you. So if anyone has any questions on Facebook or over Zoom, please ask, and we could definitely answer.
What? Please, if you have questions, just send them via Zoom or on Facebook Live. We have one question thus far. One person is asking if they had a transplant, can they still take the vaccine?
That's a great question. Dr. Friel, because you are our transplant expert now, do you want to address the transplant question?
immunosuppressants, and it being immunosuppressants will decrease your white blood cell count or the cells in your body that help produce antibodies. So, unfortunately, someone who has a transplant, you can receive this. You just might not respond as effectively to the vaccine as someone who isn't on those medications for their transplant. But that's not a reason not to try and get the vaccine, because it will offer some protection to you.
Right. So, like Dr. Friel mentioned, for the purposes of sound, if you are on any type of immunosuppressive therapy, the vaccine may not be as effective. That being said, that does not mean not to get the vaccine. So again, we want everyone to get vaccinated.
One person also just, there's a lot of skepticism. I don't know what you can say to address the high level of skepticism that is prevalent in our community.
Yeah, so there's a lot of skepticism about the vaccine. Is it safe? Again, as I mentioned before, was it rushed out too quickly to just get it going? I don't believe any of that. I believe the FDA really works hard in making sure everything was followed. Other countries released a COVID vaccine type well before the United States did, like a country like Russia, who had released something very quickly that wasn't through that type of process, and it wasn't shown to be effective. The United States, believe it or not, did take their time with guidance to prevent anything being rushed into the market without it being fully tested. With regards to safety of it, side effect wise, we've shown you what the side effects are. The biggest ones really are in pain at the injection site, which will happen with any injection you get. But it's not a reason not to get the vaccine, because COVID-19 is much worse than any injection you'll receive.
There's another question that has to do with the very nature of vaccines. Traditionally, the flu shot vaccine is done every year.
Mm-hmm.
Is this vaccine also should be taken every year, or is it have some permanency?
Right, that's a great question. So we don't know. I'll be completely honest. We don't know how often we're going to be getting this vaccine, and we're going to honestly know at the end of this year. Once enough people get vaccinated and we could see how long immunity lasts, we can check how often we're going to get this vaccine. So we don't know. I can't answer that question yet. I think in a few years I'll be able to, though.
Any other questions, Stephen? We are grateful for, I was trying to see if anybody on Zoom have any other questions, or for us to, we have these experts with us today, want to maximize our here. What are the recommendations for persons with an idiopathic and I'm not even sure, some kind of allergy? I'm not sure.
With idiopathic or any type of allergies. So with the COVID-19 vaccines, as far as allergy-wise, we do always, when we're vaccinating, and any site that's going to vaccinate has EpiPens available. Do we know if a person is very allergic to everything, they won't be allergic to COVID-19 vaccine? No, we don't, because everyone's different, right? Have we seen a lot of allergic reactions? No, from the people we have vaccinated. They do occur, right? But again, it's not something that is common, and we have the tools at every site that you will get vaccinated to. We have the tools to prevent any type of fatal allergic reaction.
What about a person with a... Okay.
We do want to mention that if you've had any anaphylaxis to other vaccines in the past, anything that caused problems with breathing or swelling of your body, it's very important to mention it to your doctor or someone who's vaccinating you first, because we have to be aware if you're in danger of that again. And anyone who's allergic to something called polysorbate, which is an additive, should also, you would know if you have that allergy, it's in everything, so you would be told probably by your doctor previously. it's very important to just let those who are vaccinating you know, so they know whether they should vaccinate you or if you should be vaccinated in a different location, maybe closer to an emergency room, just so we can respond more efficiently. But as Dr. Gerber had mentioned, we have not seen any allergic reactions at our hospital yet, and we've vaccinated well over 2,000 people. And we are fully prepared to respond in a medical emergency if anything ever happened. Everyone's very fully trained wherever you go to get the vaccine.
Thank you. Two more questions. One has to do with who determines what kind of vaccine the individual receives,
With regards to whether
Moderna or Pfizer.
So that's really determined by the site you're getting vaccinated at. Every site may have a different vaccine. At our hospital, the Brooklyn Hospital Center, we are vaccinating with Pfizer. That being said, I know that the New York Health and Hospital System, things like Higgs County or Cody Island Hospital, are using Moderna. So that really depends on where you get vaccinated.
If a person has a pacemaker, is it recommended that they take the vaccine?
If a person has a Dr. Friel, do you want to address the pacemaker question?
So we'd have to look at your other comorbidities. Usually if someone has a pacemaker, they have other diseases or comorbidities. So most likely you would be eligible to receive the vaccine.
Thank you.
One person inquiring about how many persons so far, from your estimation, have been given the second vaccine.
As far as the second vaccine, I want to say over 1,000 in our facility. We vaccinated a total of 2,000 people, so right now those that are finished are about to get their second dose as well. So I want to say over 1,000, between 1,000 and 2,000.
Yeah. Majority who got the first dose the first week they were able to for healthcare workers are fully vaccinated by now.
Correct. So like me and Dr. Friel are fully vaccinated at this point.
Any other questions? See anything else? If not, we want to thank Doc in the final closing words, both of you, closing remarks.
Absolutely. If you have any questions that do pop up, please feel free to email either myself or Dr. Friel. My email is agerber, so the letter A and then the last name Gerber, like the baby food. It's up on the screen now at tbh.org, and Dr. Friel's email is mfriel@tbh.org. Please feel free to email us really at any time with any questions that could arise. We'll be happy to answer it, because again, our goal is to get everyone vaccinated, everyone safe, and stop this pandemic once and for all.
And the final word, Dr. Free?
Yes, honestly, I agree entirely with Dr. Gerber. We're here to educate you all, but we wouldn't be here if we didn't believe in it. I wouldn't have gotten the vaccine. I wouldn't be trying to convince my grandparents right now who are super resistant to getting it to get the vaccine because they have the same concerns. So I'm actually going to show them this presentation afterwards. But I know Dr. Gerber and myself, we got it because we want to tell all our patients about the benefits. We're proof that like you can get it safely. I personally had no side effects after the second dose, so some people do, some people don't, but it's nothing to be fearful of. Just know that if you get it, you're doing your part to help stop the pandemic, and it's that much closer to being able to see your family and friends and having life return to normal again.
Dr. Gerber, any final word?
I think that was it.
Okay, so I want to thank our audio people for working so well, and our wonderful two doctors for making this happening. Here, as we indicated before, we had a conference call with our governor last night, and they're creating what they call super centers for vaccination. And we have one right here in our neighborhood at Medgar Evers College. And we hope they're going to jump on it along with the other existing places, but they're hoping to give vaccination to about 20,000 people a week. It's a major, major undertaking by our governor and our president, and so they are committed to it. We have to do our part in minimizing the rumors, the skepticism, and make sure that we become very, very educated about this process as individuals here. So I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want to thank our viewership from around the world. We saw there were a lot of people on YouTube and on Zoom. We appreciate you so much, and those on Facebook Live. We deeply, deeply appreciate your time. Let's be wise. We want to get back as much as possible to a normal existence here. We do our part and you do our part together, we can make it. Thank you, Dr. Free. Thank you, Dr. Gerber, for making it happen here. Please go out and buy some Gerber. He won't get the money from it at all, but the name will carry some way. Thank you, all the technicians. Make it back. Have a good evening. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye. Thank you, Health Ministry. That make it possible. Thank you, Health Ministry. You made it possible. Thank you, Christine, and the Health Ministry. Thank you so much.